Wednesday edition of the Bottom Line Sports Show. Gerald Brown here, as always, inside the Wednesday Bottom Line Sports Show Hangout. Here, so much to talk about. Really just talking about the whole playoffs and just everything that's associated with the playoffs. Because I tell you this, if we didn't have that debacle Sunday and Tuesday or Wednesday or Tuesday night it was, how interesting would the playoffs be? I mean, the second round has been a dud. I just think it's just been a real dud, and it's just been really, really kind of unfortunate. But kudos to the Brooklyn Nets that right now they're currently trying to hang in there and extend the series to at least the Game 6. I don't know how much that would really help them, but hey, you sell tickets in Brooklyn. It's always the draft. You did better than the Knicks, so it's always one of those things. But they're hanging in there. We're going to talk some NBA basketball tonight. We're going to talk about the Clippers, the Thunder. Their series is perhaps the best series in all of the NBA playoffs. I want to talk about the Heat and Nets. I just don't see anywhere, shape, or form that the Clippers, the Miami Heat have been challenged. They have had perhaps the easiest ride to possibly the Eastern Conference Finals that you can think of. I mean, they haven't been challenged. How do you know how good they are? How do you know how good you are? That's the biggest question. Right now, can you see anybody beating the Miami Heat? San Antonio has a test. I tell you, the way the playoffs are shaping up right now, it's looking like more and more ever we're going to have a repeat of last year's NBA Finals. And I'm not sure if a lot of people like that, but hit us up on Twitter at Beeline Sports Show, at Beeline Sports. Hit us up on Twitter. Gerald Holden will be joining us momentarily. We'll have Reeta Hubbard. Anthony Mason Jr. will be joining us. Really looking forward to talking to him and talking about his endeavors with the NBA, and the draft is right around the corner. So once again, a lot of guys that still have the dream of the NBA get an opportunity to really chase that dream. And this offseason, you have the draft combine starting tomorrow. We're going to talk to Ricky Keeler. What is going on in Major League Baseball? With so many pitchers. I mean, every time I turn around, Major League Baseball is hit with a crisis. It's not steroids, but the Tommy John injury, the Tommy John surgery. And now more than ever, does it make sense that if you are a pitcher that might have a little issue, is it possible that you decide to get the Tommy John surgery as a precaution? Just make sure you tune up everything and just make sure you don't have any problems. So be really interested to see how, we'll talk to Ricky Keeler about that, as I think that, I don't know, Shantae Cheeks could probably pitch for the Yankees now. I really believe it's been atrocious. So we'll talk to him. We'll also talk to Reeta Hubbard, the winners and losers of the NFL draft. And I just, obviously it's so difficult to try to rate a team as a winner and a loser simply because you're just going off of names, how guys are going to transition. But think about it this way. What would this NFL draft have been like if Johnny Manziel wasn't in it? What would it have been like? Every time we turn around, it's Johnny Manziel. He's carried the NFL draft. It's been interesting, and it's going to be really kind of disturbing because I don't know. Cleveland Browns have to be the odds-on favorite to be the team that's selected by HBO for Hard Knocks. And will he have enough time to be able to deliver, to really develop, so thus he can be able to deliver? So we'll talk to Reeta Hubbard because I have some questions about the Cleveland Browns. You know, everybody before they're ready to berate Teddy Bridgewater. I don't know if I would have been happy going there myself. I really don't. I really don't know what's going on. You look at the state of Cleveland sports, from the Browns to the Cavs. It's really sad. It's pathetic. You know, and it's not it's not an easy job. I will say that. When you have numerous decades upon decades of losing, just bottom feeders, it's very hard to change it overnight. You know, I always say at least the Cavs got a taste of what it was like with LeBron James there, but the Browns haven't. I mean, you go back, their last quarterback of substance, Bernie Kosar. And I mean, it's really telling when you say that. Bernie Kosar was their last franchise quarterback, if you could put your finger on that. So it's been a long, long time, and hopefully they'll get things squared away. But last night's game, Clippers and the Thunder, and one thing I will say, for all those people that knock, berate Russell Westbrook, saying that he holds Kevin Durant back, it's KD's team. Stop it. You need to stop. That team would be nowhere near a position to be able to say they're going to possibly go on to the Western Conference Finals if they didn't have Russell Westbrook there. And I'm not judging him off of one game. Because, see, the beauty of the NBA playoffs, you get a chance to really lock in, evaluate guys, and really be in a situation where you're able to really follow them. Because during the regular season, guys play back-to-back, so many different things. It's really something that's interesting, and so, that one thing alone, Russell Westbrook, it's one of those situations where he's proven his worth. And let's be honest, that is a game last night. I don't know if the Clippers lost their opportunity to win this series. It's one of those things that you played a dynamic game for 44 minutes or 48 minutes. Played it 44 minutes, maybe 43 and some change. And then the comedy of errors that existed with this franchise down the stretch, it was unfortunate. But I think still in all, they had an opportunity. And I think the saving grace, if you will, is the fact is that you just saw the Thunder go through it Sunday. So you saw the Thunder meltdown, go through it, 16 points, fourth quarter lead, 9 minutes left, and just a very, very weird situation. So both teams have really had their moments. And I will say this, Russell Westbrook, stop all the criticism, okay? The criticism and a lot of that, a lot of that frustration should be directed towards Scott Brooks. If anything, his lack of offense is really something that's really holding that franchise back. And think about it this way. Wasn't that the same criticism many people had of Carmelo Anthony with the Knicks? When you don't have an offense and your offense is predicated on, hey, Russell or Kevin, get the ball, just move out of the way, that is something that doesn't take that much. I mean, it's not rocket science. It's not rocket science. And what Durant and what Westbrook does, is he a finished product? By no means. He's not a finished product. He needs a lot of work. But his athleticism, his grit, determination, it is clearly, he was unstoppable. He was unstoppable last night. He was unstoppable during the course of that game last night. And he carried them. He carried them hands down to the point that Chris Paul couldn't guard him. I had said that once DeAndre Jordan fouled out of the game, I said it was over. Because unless, if they continue to attack the basket, which they were doing, and Russell Westbrook mainly, with that just, just a really, really strong, such much ferocity, just very, very getting to the basket, very, very strong, durable, aggressive. The Clippers were already in foul trouble. So it was nothing that they were essentially going to be able to do unless to stop him. I mean, I felt helpless for Big Baby Davis. I felt helpless. And without a rim protector, they were helpless. So I think, it's serious. Hopefully it'll go 7. It's a very evenly matched series. And it's going to be really interesting because my heart is telling me that the Clippers could beat the San Antonio Spurs this year, but my head is saying no. San Antonio Spurs, their kryptonite is the Oklahoma City Thunder. So that's their kryptonite. But, as you tip your hat to Russell Westbrook and tell him, enough of the criticism people out there, I got to tip my hat and salute a guy like Blake Griffin. His game has gotten so much better that I think a round of applause has been factored. I'm serious. The face-up jumper that he's been able to demonstrate has been phenomenal. It's been unbelievable. He's done a great, great job. And he's doing a lot of great things and continuing to develop his game. So very, very well-rounded. If they lose, you can't point the finger at Blake Griffin. He's done an unbelievable job. So there's breaking news. As you saw a couple of times, I was looking down at the iPhone and trying to get the latest information. Steve Kerr is going to the Golden State Warriors. 5 years, $25 million. Really interesting. Very, very interesting to see. And I want to look into this because I wonder if they gave Steve Kerr the same amount of money that they gave Mark Jackson. And it's going to be really interesting. Would you have the security, job security, with the New York Knicks? No, I don't think so. Now it just goes to show how strong really was the whole notion of working under Phil Jackson. The Knicks are a franchise, I hate to say it, that nobody wants to be a part of substance. Think about how many coaches that have been there, from Larry Brown, Donnie Walsh at executives. I mean Pat Riley. They have had a history of coaches, and even wipe Pat Riley out of it. Wipe him out of it. But just go through Larry Brown. They have had a multitude of coaches that have failed, unfortunately, in Madison Square Garden with the Knickerbockers. And the thing is that, who's the plan B? Who's that going to be? 5 years, $25 million. I don't blame Steve Kerr. Look, he's a West Coast guy. You go to a team that essentially you're in good graces with Jerry West. Joe Lacob, his son, he worked for Steve when he was executive with the Phoenix Suns. My only thing is, and I think that this was the big thing right here, why I'm very surprised at $25 million that they went out and gave Steve Kerr that type of money, is because, think about it this way, here on the Bottom Line Sports Show, Gerald Brown, upcoming J.R. Holden, Anthony Mason Jr., Ricky Keeler, as well as Reeta Hubbard. What would that franchise and organization looks like if you were in a situation where yesterday Stan Van Gundy joins the Pistons? He gets total control from the Detroit Pistons, which I don't understand why they would do that, but still in all, desperate teams, desperate times calls for desperate measures. Then you had Steve Kerr, who honestly I don't believe was anywhere near signing with the Knickerbockers. I think Mike Tannenbaum, former GM for the New York Jets, just used a good move, a poker move. Played each other, the Knicks and the Warriors, against one another. Well, Steve is really leaning towards signing with the Knicks. You already know how he feels about Phil Jackson. Then you have a situation where he tells the Warriors that, again, you have that roster. So it's going to be really interesting to see how it works out. For 5 years, $25 million, Steve Kerr is the newest head coach of the Golden State Warriors, and it will be very interesting. The benchmark is 51 games. They won 51 games last year, so it'll be really interesting. Let's move forward. Our first guest up tonight is a great friend to the show. And as I said before, so much has been going on with baseball, and the thing that's been associated with it is Tommy John. Let's bring him on, Ricky Keeler. Ricky, how you doing, buddy?
I'm good, Gerald. How you doing?
The Yankees could be playing better, but I just want to ask you a personal question.
Okay.
Do you think you could pitch on 5 days' notice rest? I don't know. Do you think you could step in?
We're getting to that point. I mean, the Yankees should just start taking open applications, and everybody should just pitch, because I think tomorrow night at Citi Field, you're going to have two pitchers making their Major League debuts, so it could get really ugly, or it could be 1-0.
Ricky, I tell you this. Where's El Duque when you really need him? Where's El Duque when you really need him? But, Ricky, so much is, again, as the weather is starting to warm up in the Northeast, and we've seen thus far so many pitchers be lost for the season with the dreaded Tommy John surgery, which inevitably puts guys out at least 12 months. Thus, their whole year is wiped out. We've seen it in the city with Ivan Nova of the New York Yankees last year, with Matt Harvey, New York Mets stud. What is the reason you think we have so many pitchers that have this injury this season?
Well, it's been going up in the past couple of years, and it's just really alarming when you see not only Nova, but guys like Jose Fernandez, Martin Perez in Texas, Chris Medlin in Atlanta, guys who are aces of teams, Matt Harvey even, that really these teams bank on for their future. It's just really disheartening to see. And I think one of the reasons for that, I saw Barry Larkin say it today, I saw Chris Carlin on SNY say it last night. These pitchers are throwing all year long. They're throwing in the fall, they're throwing in the winter, they're throwing in winter balls, this kind of league, Dominican League, this league, and they don't really get a chance to rest that arm. And then now you have kids coming up that really all they did is play baseball. All they did was play AAUs and travel teams and their high school teams. Like, they didn't play another sport. And that's so much wear and tear on your arm that eventually that's going to wear out. I mean, you could say it's the babying of pitchers now and not having the pitch counts. But even you've seen all these philosophies come in, whether it's the pitch counts or the innings limits, everybody's getting hurt. So you can't say it's one or the other. I just think right now you're having these pitchers throw in too many leagues, and it's eventually going to put a wear and tear on your arm.
Well, see, Ricky, I have a problem with that theory. And one of the things about it is there's no real science. I think that Major League Baseball inevitably will need to really study this, because think about it this way. How many times we've seen pitchers being baby? I'll give you a perfect example. Steven Strasburg, really baby, really protecting him, thus gets out in the situation. He reaches his innings limit. They shut him down. They don't go far in the playoffs. He gets hurt. He still got hurt. There's no written no science that says you got to protect these guys. But then I remember one of the things that was well known with, the Texas Rangers president at that time, Nolan Ryan, was saying, look, we want guys to pitch to build up their arms. We didn't have these problems 20 years ago, even 10, 15 years ago, as widespread as they are now. And inevitably, you would think there would be some type of difference, because technology and the advancements of modern medicine would alleviate that. And I don't think that it's all about, pitching. Could it just be that these kids are not as durable as the kids that once were?
I think it's a possibility. I mean, right now you're seeing kids that barely go 5 innings to start. It's all the specialized bullpens with lefty specialists and guys that can only throw an inning, guys can do this. But even to Nolan Ryan's point, Martin Perez was one of Nolan Ryan's star prospects in Texas who didn't really have an innings limit, didn't have that, and now he's got a partial tear of the UCL. So I think you got to go either way with it. I don't blame you if you do innings limits. You don't blame you if you let him throw. But the fact that Tommy John's happening in both cases, that's a big problem.
Yeah, and you have some guys this year who actually had to go back in One young man had to have the surgery all over again. It's just really mind-boggling and baffling to have a situation because we were always told, guys are on innings limits. They have to watch the amount of pitches. And yet the fact is that they still can't avoid this injury. Do you think that we'll ever see a situation transpire that guys are actually given the surgery as a preventative measure to sort of avoid any elbow ligaments and tears in their pitching arms?
I've thought about that, and I could see that. I saw Rob Dibble tweet earlier today about how it's the worst nightmare for parents to hear that at 14 to 15 years old, your kid might need Tommy John just to have it as a preventive precaution. And I think it's come to that, but I really wouldn't want to see it. I mean, I always joke that you got to put these pitchers in bubble wrap, but that's eventually what you're going to with all these guys throwing so many innings, not just in the season, because it doesn't matter for me in the season, but outside the other leagues, in the fall league, everything else, these prospects where they're throwing in, it's a huge danger because now your arm is only traded to really do one sport. I always think if you're a parent and you have a kid in high school, play multiple sports because you're gonna keep that arm a little bit rested as opposed to, let's say, if you throw all year long and with all the off-season programs. If you play a sport like basketball or soccer, it keeps you in shape, uses more of your muscles, and you're not putting as much tear on it as you usually do.
Ricky Keeler joining us here on the Bottom Line Sports Show. Gerald Brown, upcoming Anthony Mason Jr. We'll also have Reeta Hubbard as well here on the Bottom Line Sports Show. I just don't know it. I mean, because again, it's kind of like a catch-22 with Major League Baseball because we do have the baseball version of the World Cup, but that's once every 4 years. And I mean, if that's the situation, let's shut a lot of these kids down in terms of playing rookie ball, fall ball. All that needs to be going out the window. And, could we have a situation where possibly you have a lot of guys being rushed through the minors?
Mm-hmm. That's a possibility because you're seeing a lot of these prospects come up. I know certain people that got picked in the 2012 draft that are coming up within a couple of years. Jonathan Gray for Colorado is a guy that could be coming up in the summer. Mark Appel in Houston could be another guy that comes right up. I mean, these guys are going very quickly through, and that's because these MLB organizations need people that can give them innings because right now you don't have as many guys that can give you 7-8 innings a night because, like you said before, the days are long gone of guys throwing complete games every single night or throwing 8 innings a night because of all the specialized bullpen situations.
Yeah, I'm just finding it so difficult to understand, and it's just really hard to fathom. Could we ever see, could we see the Chicago White Sox, Jose Abreu, become the newest face of baseball? And in just such a short period of time, could we just see Mike Trout being replaced as the face of baseball?
I still think right now it's Trout just because he's in that big market. He's in Los Angeles. This is a guy that right now does a little bit of everything. He's the 5-tool player. I really like the start Abreu's off to. 15 home runs. I think he's like the fastest. It's like 15 homers through over the course of 40 games. He hit a 3-run homer today to beat Oakland on the road. He's adjusted so far to basically every aspect of pitching you can imagine. In his first game, they threw him fastballs, and they threw him breaking balls outside, and they jammed him in. This guy hits everything, and he's not really your typical rookie because he was very good in the Cuban League. He was very good in the World Baseball Classic. At this point, this is a guy that I think could be the face of the White Sox, absolutely, along with Chris Sale. The problem with Abreu in Chicago, the White Sox, I think, are about a year or two away from being contention. Right now, if you look at the American League Central, the Tigers are up almost 6 in the loss column on Kansas City. So at this point, Chicago is a long way away. And the same thing happened with Trout the last couple of years. The Angels have been so far out of contention. It's been tough to make it in the MVP. Abreu's start is great. You just want to see Chicago maybe get some pitching together. And if the White Sox get maybe in the start and playoff contention, you can see Abreu. But there's another problem with baseball is you don't really market your superstars. You really market your team. So if the White Sox aren't playing well, you forget about Abreu despite the great start that he's having.
Yeah, and I think also, too, is that, let's be honest, baseball is in an unfortunate situation because a lot of the Latin players who are stars are really in a situation where they don't speak, they're not bilingual, so thus they're not speaking English. It really takes away their sort of total value of being able to market. I mean, can you imagine Yasiel Puig in the Los Angeles area with him being able to speak, if he was bilingual and being able to speak English? I mean, it would be Fernando Mania all over again. So just really interesting to see exactly. But again, Jose Abreu Make no mistake, he's been playing very, very well. Now, a guy that's been perhaps the only healthy body and consistent pitcher on the New York Yankees pitching staff, Masahiro Tanaka. And I remember, Ricky, Brian Cashman had said when they signed him actually at his press conference, Tanaka's, he said, you know what, he was going to be their fourth or third. I think he said between third or fifth start. I couldn't remember specifically which one it was. But is this a situation that quietly, perhaps the Yankees management, starting with Brian Cashman, were hoping that Tanaka could be the ace of the Yankees? And how soon could you see them be in a situation that possibly they have to make a trade to upgrade that pitching staff?
Well, I think at Brian Cashman, while he gave Tanaka all that money and he gave him ace-like money, they were expecting him really to ease into things to start off with. I don't think you were looking, at least for me, to be an ace year one. It was mainly year two or year three. At least that's what I thought when he signed the deal. But you couldn't tell Brian Cashman that your so-called ace and CC Sabathia now has degenerative knees, and he's getting a cortisone shot with stem cells tomorrow, so see where that goes. Hiroki Kuroda, meanwhile, is struggling to get through 6 innings on any given night. You saw
he's 40. How old is he? He's like 40 years old, right?
Kuroda, I think, is like 39 at this point.
He's 39, 40 years old. I mean, he's done.
You have Nova now, who had to undergo Tommy John, so you lose your number 3 starter. So now Tanaka's basically become the ace by default. Now, he's been outstanding. I mean, there's no question about it. He's been a top 5 star in the American League this year. Another solid outing tonight so far, 6 shut-ins against the New York Mets. And he's become really their stopper. When the Yankees have these big losing streaks to start the year, he comes in, maybe has a rough inning or two, and then comes out. The splitter works great, and I've just loved the way he's been pitching so far. Problem for the Yankees is they have nobody to give them length right now. They have Vidal Nuno and David Phelps in the rotation, both who are relievers. Chase Waitley, like I said before, is making his Major League start debut tomorrow night. He can barely give you 5 innings. Now, the Yankees can go out and make a trade for Jeff Samardzija. Their prospects are more so in Double-A than Triple-A right now in terms of immediate call-ups. Right now, the Yankees, well, I think Samardzija would be a good guy to get because the Cubs don't score many runs. Brings it a hefty price. Brian Cashman said they are looking for external options. At this point, the Yankees just need to look for a guy that can give you 5-6 innings a night, give it maybe 3-4 runs, because this offense is second in average. They're hitting the ball pretty well. Solarte's been a nice surprise, along with the likes of Teixeira and Ellsbury. But the Yankees need to get to the bullpen, because while the parts of the bullpen have been bad, but Betances has been pretty good. I like Warren and David Robertson. When he's had chances to close, is 6 for 6, and in a wide-open AL East where nobody's running away with it right now. The Yankees can afford to not maybe go for that ace, because Tanaka's been that way, but maybe go for a 2 or 3 or 4 starter, somebody they can just get them innings and save the bullpen a little bit.
Yeah, is it a situation where we see is there Freddie Garcia? I mean, could we possibly see a guy like Freddie? Is that type of guy out there, like a Freddie Garcia type of guy? I mean, I didn't even hear Jeff Samardzija, the young man who played football at Notre Dame, pitching for the Chicago Cubs. I just worry about a lot of these guys that you bring in, specifically for the National League, to be able to endure pitching in that American League is torture if you're not prepared for it. Because, again, you're pitching with the DH, and some of your best hitters, I mean, you got guys like hitting 270, 280 and above, perhaps at the 7 hole in the American League East. Even though Toronto struggles in Baltimore, they still can hit, and we all know about Boston. But what type of pitcher would it be outside of Samardzija that would be out there? What are some of the names that possibly you're hearing that possibly could be on the Yankees' radar?
It's too early to give maybe those kind of definitive names because right now there's so many teams in the midst of that second wild card because we're not sure where that goes by June. Randy Wolf just signed with the Miami Marlins, so that maybe would have been an option. Garcia's off in, I think, Japan or Korea or somewhere. At this point, maybe he's not going to be around. The Yankees, I think, right now there's not a certain name. I just think at some point they got to hope that CC comes back off the knees. We'll see. Right now they said 15 days, maybe a little bit more, but at least it's better than what they thought when he went to go see Dr. Andrews. If they can get CC and Kuroda to bounce back a little bit, they don't really need a pressing young guy like Samardzija where they have to give up a lot. Cliff Lee's an option, but again, they might have to give up a lot for him as well. The Yankees, I think, like I said, just need to get Pineda back maybe. They're maybe relying more on health at this point to get them to June because the division, nobody's going to run away with it right now. They just need that guy that's going to give them 5-6 innings, 3 or 4 runs, because this offense, I think, right now can carry the table as long as Carlos Beltran doesn't need surgery.
Yeah, here on the Bottom Line Sports Show. And I mean, again, you're stacked in the right field. If Beltran goes out, I mean, you have Ichiro, Soriano's look good. The more you let these guys play, you just really have to worry about their running down. But it just seems like where's Esteban Loaiza when you need him? Where is it? So far, it's the early start is part of the season. Who would you classify, right now as your surprises, early surprises and disappointments?
Well, I'll give you a surprise and disappointment in each league. Surprise, I like San Francisco Giants. A lot of people thought the Dodgers were going to run away with the West, and they were going to be that super favorite team. And Clayton Kershaw hasn't been healthy for most of the season, but the Giants have come out. They got over 25 wins to start the year. Tim Hudson's been one of the great signings to start. They've gotten great back end starting rotation help from Lincecum and Vogelsong, so that's been solid for them. Pence had a big day today against Atlanta, and they've dominated them. So I really like what the Giants been doing. Colorado's been great out west. That whole NL West has been really surprising. Disappointment maybe for me in the National League would be the Cardinals. Right now they're at 500. They're not hitting well with men in scoring position. It's not really the same team we saw last year other than Adam Wainwright. There's not many guarantees in that rotation. They can catch Milwaukee. I'm pretty confident in that. But right now they're just a team that may be sliding a little bit under expectation. In the American League, I got to say Texas because the Rangers are in second in the AL West is my surprise because they've had 16 injuries so far. I mean, everybody's getting hurt on that team. And somehow they just lost Perez today. They lost Matt Harrison again on the DL. Somehow they're just still right up there with Oakland. And that's because guys like Fielder and Chu and Beltray doing a great job over there. I'm a disappointment in the American League has to be the Royals. This is a team everybody waits to do everything, waits to be that team that's going to break it through and catch the Tigers. And right now they're 6 out in the Central. Their manager's in the hot seat. Their young third baseman Moustakis is in danger of being demoted. Hosmer can't hit any home runs. Kansas City's struggling at the plate, and they don't really have much in the rotation. I don't think they're going to catch Detroit. I think Detroit is really the pivotal favorite in the Central. So to be that second wild card and catch a team like Texas or somebody out of the East, really pretty tough. So right now the Royals, I think Ned Yost could realistically be the first guy that gets fired midseason if they don't pick it up real quick.
Yeah, I had said here on the Bottom Line Sports Show, Ricky Keeler, talking baseball, Gerald Brown. One of the things I said before you came on, I was talking about mainly the state of the Cleveland sports franchises in that city itself. Mm-hmm. It's so difficult to break a culture of losing. And you're right, with Moustakas, all the guys, Billy Butler, all those pitchers and all the players that the Kansas City Royals. But a lot of the times it's also just about the fact is it's very difficult to change a culture of losing, and develop it if you don't have anybody that knows how to do it. I mean, think about it this way. The Tampa Bay Rays were like that. All of a sudden, they caught lightning in a bottle. They hired Joe Madden. Out of nowhere, he gets it going. But think about it, when they had Lou Piniella in there, it was a disaster. So it's very, very difficult, and hopefully, they're not there. I don't know what else they need. I thought that their pitching has come around, but like you said before, again, what they've been able to do early on. And in regards to St. Louis, listen, that team has been so steady
mm-hmm.
of an organization that I don't believe that they feel in any way, shape, or form that they can see a situation where possibly the Pirates or the Cincinnati Reds or the Brewers really running away with the division. So thus, it's about running the sort of marathon as opposed to sprinting
mm-hmm.
out the gate. I mean, conventional wisdom would be in a situation where you'd like to get off to a fast start and be able to, run off with a fast start and get out to a comfortable lead. But still in all, with their pitching as well as the hitting, this team finds ways to do it and find a way to do it. And I don't believe in Milwaukee, like you said, and I think that Pittsburgh it's just Pittsburgh. They make great strides, but again, it'll be a challenge to see if they can do it again this year.
No, absolutely, because you look at the Pirates right now, they really don't have any offense to speak of other than McCutchen and Alvarez. I do like Milwaukee a little more. I don't know if they're going to hang on in the Central, but I do think they're a playoff threat. Very good 1-5 starting pitching. We saw that against the Yankees a little bit. Loesch was pretty good. I like Garza, and I like Gallardo. Plus, they just lost Ryan Braun. They're still 25-14 now. Braun's back. Ramirez on the DL at third base, but this is a Brewers lineup with Gomez and Lucroy. Still pretty deep. So I buy Milwaukee a little bit. I'm not sure if K-Rod can be this consistent closer, but I think Milwaukee and St. Louis are definitely the two teams that I think will compete in the Central unless the Reds can get healthy pitching-wise.
Yeah. Hey, Ricky, let everybody know where they can catch up on everything you got going on as well as anything that's upcoming.
All right, you can follow me on Twitter all the time, at Rickinator555. It's at R-I-C-K, letter I, Nader555 on Twitter. I'm a senior staff writer over at Yank Schoolyard. I also host the Yank Schoolyard Series preview show, which you can catch for every Yankee series. That includes tomorrow night, 11 o'clock Eastern Time, I'll have a writer on talking about the Pirates. We will get into the Pirates' struggles and Garrett Cole coming back to the Yankee Stadium since being drafted by the Yankees and not coming there. We'll talk about that a little bit. And then we have the Cubs show on Monday. Also, I write for a Patriot site, foxboroblog.com. Just did a Q&A with my friend Stephen Sheehan from from fanrag.com, who's a Florida graduate student, about Dominic Easley, who I graduated with in high school. So it's pretty cool to see a first-round pick go to your favorite team from your high school. And then also working on another one with a Eastern Illinois student about Jimmy Garoppolo, so Patriots can get to know maybe their future starting quarterback. So I'll keep that out in mind the next couple of days.
Yeah, it should be really interested. Ricky, as always, man, you stay busy, and I feel I learn a lot more when I talk to you specifically about Major League Baseball, and somehow you always find a way to sneak a New England Patriots in there. Yeah. But again, it's always a treasure and a pleasure to talk to you, Ricky. And thanks again. Look forward to talking to you real soon.
Absolutely, Gerald. It's always a pleasure. So you teach me more basketball, I teach you baseball. We're pretty much even.
Done deal, my friend. Ricky Keeler, here on the Bottom Line Sports Show. Yankees, Yankees, Yankees. You might need Ricky to suit up. I don't know. The Yankees might need that. Looks like the end of the road is coming for the Brooklyn Nets. Yeah. Valiant effort, valiant fight. And, one thing I will say about them, it's about 9 seconds, almost 9.5 seconds left in the game. Then they're down 94-96. Still relatively an opportunity to tie the game. But they had a nice lead. But once again, this is the Miami Heat. I actually posed this, and this is something that we're going to probably talk about on Sirius XM this weekend. Make sure you check us out on Sirius XM channel 217 every Saturday and Sunday starting at 10 a.m. The Bottom Line Sports Show is, there's a possibility if they make a few tweaks in here, but still the framework, there's still a possibility that the the Miami Heat could four-peat. I mean, think about it this way. Barring any type of unrealistic trades or things like that, this Brooklyn Nets team just turned the ball over. They said they got fouled. 5 seconds left, 96-94. The Nets turned the ball over. Paul Pierce. The Miami Heat could realistically four-peat. Think about it this way. Depending on what happens with Carmelo Anthony, does he stay in New York? How much of a threat does the New York Knicks become? No, they're not a threat. You look at a situation where Chicago Bulls, you get a healthy Derrick Rose back, and if Carmelo goes there, well, what has been the Achilles heel that has really hurt this team? Lack of scoring. They're not a threat to the Miami Heat. Indiana Pacers, we've seen them. It's been a lot of ups and downs, and if this team falls short, I don't see this team being able to stay together. Granted, Frank Vogel deserves to keep his job, but this team is definitely going to have to make some changes. And if they're not adding a guy like Rajon Rondo to the mix, this team right there, and I mean, granted, they did win 50-plus games, they're not a threat to the Miami Heat. So you look at the East, and you handicap the East, okay? There's nothing out there that poses a threat for this team to actually four-peat. And I think that will be the proverbial theme going into next season in terms of, can this team really four-peat? This will have this team, their antennas up. This will get their juices going. One thing about a team that's been to the mountaintop, they know how to manage a season. They don't need to get off to the big start. I mean, think about it this way. When they went into Philadelphia beat them. Everybody, oh, my God, Philadelphia. How do you let the Philadelphia 76ers? They lost, I think it's 3 or 4 times they lost to the Brooklyn Nets regular season. Doesn't matter. Greg Popovich, San Antonio Spurs, great coach. Said, we don't care about the regular season. We don't care. But you're still able to win 60 games. There is a science to this whole situation. And honestly, the only threat would be in the West, and that would be the San Antonio Spurs. And how will the Spurs look next year? What will be their sort of makeup? OKC, we already seen what their situation. unless they address the center position, unless they get some more of an offensive scheme, they're not going to be a threat. The Golden State Warriors, they have a lot of talent, but now what type of, adjustments, what type of learning curve will there be for a guy like Steve Kerr, who is the newest head coach of the Golden State Warriors? Where is the challenge? Where does the challenge lie for the Miami Heat? And I don't see it. I don't see it at all. This is a team that easily could be in a situation where they could possibly be, 4-peat. And they have just put the Brooklyn Nets out of their misery. So 96-94, the Nets had two opportunities to really tie the game. Unfortunately, they move on, and possibly the end of the careers for guys like Kevin Garnett, as well as a guy like Paul Pierce. So if you look at it now, was this experiment, if you will, was it the bringing in Paul Pierce and Garnett? Was it successful? Was it a success? Did it? The Mikhail Prokhorov, the owner, made it known that he wanted the team to, they wanted to win a final. They wanted to get to the finals. They wanted to win it all. And on paper, just like anything, on paper, we thought instantly this was a team that could give the Miami Heat some problems. And, I'd always said before, learn your lesson from the year before. When everybody saw Dwight Howard go out to L.A., you saw Dwight, Kobe, Pau Gasol. That team crashed and burned. So sometimes what you see on paper is not always what you get. Here on the Bottom Line Sports Show, Gerald Brown flying solo tonight, and it's been fun. Hanging out, waiting for Anthony Mason Jr., also Reeta Hubbard is going to be joining us. So, again, the Eastern Conference Finals, once again, the Miami Heat there. And the beauty of it all is they're probably going to have a couple days off. They're going to have some time off. And the one thing that's really interesting, this team did not show any rust. When the Nets played 7 games, they were off 8 days, 7-8 days. This team showed no absolute rust whatsoever, and this team continues to march on. They know it's winning time. They know it's winning time, and really interested to see how it plays out. But this is a team right now. I'm going to say it right now. They win it this year, they could actually 4-peat. And that might be the incentive for a guy like LeBron. Rather than opt out, stay there. Dwayne Wade's health and his injuries with his knees. How long can he go? That is going to be an area of concern. How long can he go? In terms of, the production out of guys like Ray Allen, how much more they have left in the tank. What are you going to get out of guys like Mario Chalmers and Norris Cole? Some of these guys are up for big paydays and stuff. And it's just going to be really interesting to see how it all plays out. But the poison pill is in place with the early termination options for Bosh, Wade, and LeBron James. And I know that a guy like Chris Bosh has said that he wouldn't opt out. He wants to stay there. He's not going to opt out. But very hard-pressed to find a team not prepared to offer Chris Bosh max contract money because he deserves it. He's played very, very well, and he is a guy that really has shown you that he is a number one. Unfortunately, he just sacrificed a lot of his game playing on a very, very talented team. But, kudos to the Miami Heat. And as I said before, Brooklyn Nets, I think it's been before anybody says it's been a failure, I got to say it's been a success. You lost Brook Lopez, an all-star center, 7-footer. Kevin Garnett was done. He ran on fumes. Garnett was done. You had the ankle injuries with Darren Williams. This team really, really struggled getting things going in the beginning. Got it going late, hit a stretch where they were able to elevate and move on to the playoffs. But let's be honest, this is a team that once they lost Brook Lopez, I think you lost that sort of kryptonite, if you will, to be able to have a chance to beat possibly a Miami Heat team. And then keep in mind, Miami Heat are a team that they're going to run up and down the court. The Brooklyn Nets are very slow, methodical. They want to play in a half court set, and wasn't meant to be. And if it's the last hurrah for guys like Kevin Garnett, he has 1 year left on his contract. Unbelievable career. Paul Pierce, I think you can look forward to seeing him gracefully bow out and be in a situation where potentially he will be signed by the Boston Celtics, and rightfully so. Being able to gracefully retire as a Celtic would be the whole thing that you really anticipate moving forward. So it's just going to be one down. One team is already in the finals, and that being the Miami Heat. Right about now, the Portland Trailblazers and San Antonio Spurs. And, sometimes you got to look at a situation where the Spurs, and so much we've talked about tonight has been on changing a culture. How do you change a culture, a franchise culture? How do you really change it? Look at the Cleveland Browns. Everybody is in hysteria for Johnny Manziel in football. Mike Brown, the Cleveland Cavaliers hired the coach twice. Once they fired him again. And oh, by the way, after 1 year, and you just gave him a 5-year deal. So he walks away with 4 years, countless money still left on the contract. Franchises that successfully win and are built from top to bottom and have success make very few mistakes. You look at the Los Angeles Lakers track record. Very few mistakes. Dr. Buss was there, Kupchak, Jerry West was there. Very few mistakes. And even when Jerry West left to take over the Memphis Grizzlies and stuff, you saw the foundation was still solid and sturdy. But now you have a situation where, again, when you try to change the culture of losing, it doesn't happen overnight. That's why I thought it was just so asinine that the Golden State Warriors decided to get rid of Mark Jackson. And I know a lot of people were saying, it was more internal and, all these things that were painted out there. But one thing for certain, the man won. You won 51 games. That is just the thing where you measure a guy by. He had success. The players bought in. And some of the things were so crazy. Oh, well, his offense, it was too much ISO. I don't care if it was VISO. I don't care if it was BISO, SISO, KISO. Won 50 games. 51 games. 51 games. Wasn't it like he was in the Eastern Conference? He was in the West. And you won 51 games. And it just goes to show great franchises, sound, structured franchises from top to bottom, they don't have these issues. Look at the New York Knicks. You're a major job. You're in a major market like New York City. Phil Jackson is there. And you can't find the coach of your choice. You would think there was a time where guys were lining up to take that New York Knicks job. Again, when you have a culture of losing, very difficult. It's almost like if you continue to sweep garbage under the rug. Pretty soon, it's just so much there that you can't hide it. And if you don't have a broom or a dustpan, it's very difficult to get up. I'm being honest. Look at the Miami Heat. Once Pat Riley goes there, provides stability. Have they had any problems? You drafted Dwayne Wade. Yes, they've had ebb and flows, but their down times have been very, very limited. To the point where you rode a wave of the playoffs with Alonzo Mourning, you go draft Dwayne Wade, and now you see that as Dwayne Wade's injuries take precedence, LeBron James pops up on your doorstep. Great organizations don't have those problems. They don't. Look at the San Antonio Spurs, who are 1 win away. They up 4-1 early, games very early, first quarter. But look at this team and look at this organization. You can say, what, 16, 17 years of constantly, 16, 17 consecutive years of making the NBA playoffs. 16, 17 years consecutive. No off years, no nothing. And what they did was, you took 2 drafts where they caught lightning in a bottle, and they have written it all the way out. From David Robinson to Tim Duncan, and they've added pieces to it. And added pieces that fit and bought into the culture that they have. And I think it's phenomenal. I mean, some could argue, and this is something we're probably going to talk about this weekend here on the Bottom Line Sports Show, Gerald Brown. The fact is, there could be an argument made the San Antonio Spurs are the greatest franchise in sports history. To be able to, and I mean, again, you know, people say, oh, the Yankees, the Boston Celtics. This team has gone 16 years. I think it's about 16 years without missing the playoffs. In the Western Conference, they lose Game 6 in a heartbreaking fashion last year. Game 6. Come out, lose Game 7. Most teams, you would think, will take a year off. How we say, it's very difficult to get back to the NBA Finals. Some get off to a slow start. They won 60 games this year. 60 games. And the beauty of it all, they don't always play their guys each and every single game. They have guys rest. They have guys in a situation where Popovich has no problem starting guys, resting guys. And this is such a fascinating thing that I think if you look at it, you sit back and say, from top to bottom, an organization that's able to have that type of success is clearly, you know, has to be up there, if not the greatest sports franchise in history. 62 games in the Western Conference, where if you look at it, I think Phoenix, the AC in this year's playoffs, the Dallas Mavericks, won 49 games. 49 games. They won 11 more games than the AC in the Eastern Conference. So you factor in of 50 wins in the you know, the 7th seed was the 6th seed was a 51-win Golden State Warriors. They would have been the 3rd seed in the East. 51 wins. 3rd seed. Houston would have been the number 2 seed at 54 wins in the Eastern Conference. And the San Antonio Spurs, 62 wins. And think about it. Manu Ginobili, okay? Mid-30s. We already know Tim Duncan. You look at Tony Parker. These guys, minutes, managed, they take time off, and it's no drop-off. No drop-off at all. And never forget, people used to always say, oh, the Spurs, they're boring, and nobody dumb, and a very, very tough team to watch. Yeah. But you know why? Because they play basketball the way it was supposed to be played. Fundamentally sound. Everybody moves. If you're a basketball coach, high school, maybe even if you're a Cleveland Cavaliers coach or the GM, sit down and watch the San Antonio Spurs. And out of that, you've seen countless teams taking that model. And they have evolved where their model and way of doing things has spawned Jacque Vaughn in Orlando, the Oklahoma City Thunder, Sam Hinkie, the general manager, Mike Budenholzer in Atlanta with Danny Ferry, Brett Brown in Atlanta, in Philadelphia, They have spawned so many different types of offsprings to really provide a way of thinking and just that this is sort of the blueprint. And yes, those teams perhaps haven't had the same type of success, but 16 years of making of making the playoffs each and every single year. And I think the closest team that's second, I think it's the Atlanta Hawks, like 7 or 8. 16. 16. I think it's phenomenal. I think it speaks volumes, and a lot of people and I said before, I drank the Kool-Aid. I thought the Portland Trail Blazers would be a team that would give the San Antonio Spurs fits. Running, they like to run. They get up and down the court. I had already said Damian Lillard has arrived. Damian Lillard has arrived. LaMarcus Aldridge, hands down, first round, he might have been one of the MVPs. He might have easily been an MVP, the way he dominated. But the difference is, San Antonio plays defense. San Antonio will make you work hard. Houston, not the case at all. Not the case at all. Here on the Bottom Line Sports Show, Gerald Brown, upcoming Reeta Hubbard, Anthony Mason Jr. Don't forget, every Wednesday night here on the Bottom Line Sports Show, started off at 9 o'clock here in the Hangout. Those that's watching, we say hello. And don't forget, you can watch the show and listen to the show, 7 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 10 a.m. on Saturdays and Sundays. Channel 217 on Sirius XM, NBA Radio, Channel 217. Here on the Bottom Line Sports Show. So, the NFL draft this past week, unbelievable, and gotta say one thing about the NFL. One thing I will say, you have to tip your hat to Roger Goodell. They march to their own beat and their own drum. They do. How do you take a draft and put it in the middle of the NBA playoff? Now, they had talked about, and it was some discussions of, let's push it back so we can have one every single, month. We have something big going on. And this year, I think the Radio City Music Hall wasn't available until May, so it just really worked out for them to give it a test run. And I think right now, I think that it would be a detriment to the fans if they decided to move it back to its regular space in April. I love it in May because the intrigue, the anticipation, it was beautiful. It was beautiful. It was really beautiful. You didn't know who was going number one, the intrigue, and as much as I just liked all the the Johnny Manziel talk, it was one of those situations where it added to value. It added value to the whole draft itself because, you didn't know where it was going to go. Jadeveon Clowney, Blake Bortles, all of that so much. And it was must-see TV starting Thursday. And I just couldn't help but sit back and say, wow, in the middle of the NBA playoffs, as good as the NBA playoffs have been, the first round at least, they said, so what? So what? Move over and step aside. Big boys are playing. And that's what the NFL did. And that's why their product is number one. Because you had people tune in to watch a draft, prime time, Thursday night, where you have the playoffs coming on. And people tune in Thursday night, Friday night, and Saturday afternoon. And that's why I said, it's such a beautiful thing. But the flip side of that is the whole notion that the NFL decided to talk about moving it around. I just don't think it makes any sense. I think it's been great to have it in New York City, and why mess with a product? And speaking of somebody that knows a thing or two about the NFL, and even though she was just too busy to hang out with Mr. Gerald Brown, the lovely Reeta Hubbard joins us.
You shouldn't tell stories, Gerald.
What am I telling a story? What am I lying about?
Yes, you are telling a story.
You big time me.
I tried to contact you, and you did not answer the phone until I had already went about my way. So,
what did you end up doing that night? Did you get a chance to catch any of the events or anything, or no?
nah, I'm so turned down. I was literally tired, just being at the draft, doing stuff for the draft. I just got myself something to eat and a nightcap to drink. Went back to my room and went to sleep. Yeah.
Tell that for somebody else. That's the visual version. Okay, Reeta, I want to ask you something before we get into the talk about the draft. If you look at it, and one thing I said was so interesting was that you could really just tell that the NFL itself is really head and shoulders and knows exactly that they're head and shoulders of any league, because they went in on a Thursday night in the midst of the NBA playoffs and really just took over the whole sports media. I don't think it's a good idea to even think about moving the draft around. I know people have said, "Oh, it'd be great," but I just think it's something about New York City and the NFL draft that goes hand in hand. Good idea, good move or bad move if they decide to start rotating to various places.
I mean, I guess it's good for the fans because if they can't make it to New York, they would have the opportunity to experience it. But I think that that's the part of the draft experience, to go to New York, to go to Radio City Music Hall. These are things that people probably never do or would never do. And then they have the opportunity to explore New York and hang out in New York. I like it there. I think that, it gives people an excuse to get out of town for a couple of days and enjoy themselves. The NFL sometimes, I think, thinks that they're so far ahead that they can innovate and be smarter than everybody else, when really sometimes simplicity is key. And they're already talking about adding it another day, and then they're already talking about moving it to Memorial Day weekend. It's just so many changes. I just don't think that they have to keep reinventing the wheel. What they have right now is good. Being in New York is fine. 3 days is fine. Just leave it at that. Let the fans come and get an experience from it.
But Reeta, let me ask you this here on the Bottom Line Sports Show, Reeta Hubbard. What, they add another round, so they would go 8 rounds instead of 7?
It would still be 7 rounds, but I think it would be the first round would be one night, and then the second round would be one night, and then 3, 4, 5, and then 6 and 7. It's just too much, Right. By the 4th day, fans are drained anyway, and then that means that the NFL has to come with new innovative ideas to keep the fans interested by the 4th day, because by the 3rd day they're kind of over it, and they give people incentives like, they at one point in time they were allowing the fans to go up and give the picks, and then they did a public forum with the commissioner. So now what are you going to do on the 4th day to keep people from, not going anymore? It's just too much. And the NFL knows that they're the #1 league in the country, and I think that they're trying to do too much to overexpose that.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I just don't want to see a draft. I don't want to see a guy like Jameis Winston or whoever's in college now going up to the podium in Jacksonville. I don't want to see that. I don't want to see that. And no disrespect to the city of Jacksonville, Florida. I don't want to see it there, okay? I don't want to see that at all. No, we just keep it in New York because, like you said before, the allure of it. And then I said that I like the fact is that they pushed it back to a couple of weeks in May. I thought it was great because it just added even more intrigue this year, because we didn't know who was going to be the first pick. Yes, it was more Johnny Manziel talk, but it was the intrigue of the draft itself, and I thought it was a great idea. The draft was centered around Johnny Manziel and just really all the things with him, Jadeveon Clowney. Let me ask you something. We saw him being drafted by the Cleveland Browns, but in your opinion, how surprised were you that the Cleveland Browns decided to take cornerback Justin Gilbert out of Oklahoma State with their first pick instead of Sammy Watkins, wide receiver out of Clemson, when the Browns knew that wide receiver Josh Gordon, superstar last year, likely will be suspended for the entire season because of failed drug tests?
I am baffled. I have no idea what Cleveland was doing at that point. You knew 2 weeks prior to the draft that Sammy Watkins would probably be there when you got him, and that Josh Gordon was probably going to be suspended for the whole season. He just failed the drug test 2 months ago. Now he's failing another drug test. And, we saw that they tried to trade him last year. So, they put him out on bait before the trade deadline last year, which told us and gave us some, implications that they were kind of fed up because he was suspended a couple of games for drugs last year. I just don't understand what their thought process was, knowing that they had the number 4 pick and knowing that Sammy Watkins it was a good chance that he was going to be there, which he was there. And then instead they pick a safety. Now, I know that they lost TJ Ward in the offseason, and maybe they wanted to reboost their secondary. I just think that, if they knew that they were going to get Manziel all along, or even if they weren't going to get Manziel, if they stay with Brian Hoyer, outside of the tight end, that's probably going to be an elite tight end at some point, who else are they going to throw to? And it's just, I don't know what goes on in Cleveland. I have no idea. This is the same organization that said some homeless man told them to pick, Manziel. So it just, the stories just make themselves, it's crazy. And it's, Browns fans are really sensitive. But, these jokes come from a whole lot of miscues and missed opportunities. So, I just don't know what was going on in Farmer's mind. I really would like to know.
Well, I mean, you have to extend it to even Jimmy Haslam, the owner. I mean, listen, let's be honest. They got rid of their head coach last year of only 1 year on the job. They made the crazy trade of trading Trent Richardson middle of the season. It's just been one thing after another. And, before you came on here on the Bottom Line Sports Show, Gerald Brown, Reeta Hubbard, a.k.a. the NFL chick, I had said it's so difficult to change a culture when you have a losing culture. I mean, we've seen it, look, it's in Cleveland with the Indians, with the Browns, and the Cavaliers. And, yeah, they had a spurt where, again, a moment when LeBron was there. But we look at the whole thing and the likelihood when you talk about cultures, changing a culture and losing culture into a winning culture. And it's just been unbelievable. Look at a situation like the Jacksonville Jaguars. I think they've won like 10 years or so where they've drafted constantly in the top 10 of each draft for the last 10 years, if I'm not mistaken. Did they get it right by taking Blake Bortles so high, in which they did?
I'm not a big Blake Bortles fan. I'm on the record of not being a fan of that pick. They did give him some help in the draft, which could help them essentially, but I'm not a huge fan of that pick. And here's why, because we know all at some point that he's going to take Chad Henne's spot. Chad Henne is not really, a guy that has a solidified spot at quarterback. And we know that at some point Blake Bortles is going to be the guy that's going to take that spot. And really, it's not a matter of if, it's when. Is it going to be within 4 weeks? Is it going to be mid-season? Is it going to be by the end of the season? I think by mid-season, he'll already be there. I think that he has a lot of upside in terms of his physical abilities. I just don't think that he's ready to play in the NFL yet. And I think that he would learn better by having the opportunity to just understand the defense by being on the sidelines and seeing what's going on, as opposed to being thrown in the fire. This could really, he could either be really great or he could be Blaine Gabbert 2.0. And I don't know what's going to happen here. I'm not a huge fan of him. I think that he has a lot of work to do, but Jacksonville loved him, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah. And the thing about it is, Rita, it goes back to, like I said before, when you are a losing franchise and organization, it is so difficult to get out of your own way sometimes. And unfortunately, I mean, I've always questioned how much help did Blaine Gabbert have when
Mm.
Justin Blackmon, and this is similar to the whole situation with Cleveland. Think about it this way: when your last franchise quarterback has been Bernie Kosar, that says a lot. And then on top of that, go to Jacksonville. When your last top flight #1 wide receiver was Jimmy Smith. It just
Looking
goes
back.
to show.
You're looking back.
But think about it. When has there been a #1 wide receiver for Jacksonville that you could sit back and say that is a #1 wide receiver since Jimmy Smith? But the whole thing about it is, if you don't have these guys have good supporting cast around them, a la like Russell Wilson had in Seattle, Colin Kaepernick when he did start, Matt Ryan when he got a chance to start, even Andrew Luck and RG3, you're setting these guys up to fail. And then once again, every 2 to maybe 3 years, you're constantly picking a quarterback.
I agree.
If you look at a lot of these guys this year and you look at these quarterbacks, we were told that none of them were really ready, if you thought about it, to perhaps be able to start immediately. Looking at it, how surprised were you that the Texans did not address their quarterback position until the 4th round with Tom Savage, the quarterback out of the University of Pittsburgh?
I am surprised actually. I think that I think that they thought that Teddy Bridgewater would be available, and he wasn't available. Obviously, Minnesota went up and got him. But then there's the factor of they waited a few rounds and then they got Tom Savage. They tried to say that they're not going to go after Ryan Mallett. Both New England and the Texans said this after New England drafted a quarterback. And then it came out again that, oh, yeah, maybe they do get Ryan Mallett. I think that they are going to try to trade for Ryan Mallett. I think that that's going to be the plan all along. It's been the plan. And that Tom Savage is just another guy that they wanted to keep on the roster that can possibly make the roster, because I don't even remember who they have at this point. Fitzpatrick,
Fitzpatrick and Case Keenum, yeah.
And then the other guy, the rookie guy that had the playoff game a couple of years ago. So I think that Tom Savage is just a guy that's going to be a backup guy, but I think that they ultimately are still going to go for Ryan Mallett.
Yeah, that would really make a lot. Reeta Hubbard, the NFL chick here on the Bottom Line Sports Show, Gerald Brown. Can any of these teams that drafted a quarterback afford to sit them a year to learn? Okay, which team? Is there a team that you could sit back?
All of them can, really. I mean, they're probably not
afford to, Rita.
Cleveland has.
Cleveland. Well, let's be honest. Cleveland can't afford to sit him. They're going to be screaming for his name at the moment he plays game 2, games 3, whatever. He can't afford to sit him.
No, I don't think he can afford to sit either. And what's funny is that I think that he won't sit, and I don't necessarily like that idea. I like Brian Hoyer. I think that if Brian Hoyer is consistent, in training camp, he should start and give Johnny Manziel some time. I don't like the idea of him starting immediately, but I think that at some point it happens. The owner came out and was like, he's the backup, but you didn't draft him to be the backup. You drafted him for people to be excited about football again and for him to play. So I don't think that happens. Cleveland really has the most talent around them right now, where they could use, all it takes is a quarterback for them to be possibly a playoff contender. I think the other teams, though, they're just not that good. I mean, give yourself some time to build and let your quarterback, patiently get into the system. I don't know if that'll happen. I don't think that'll happen. I think that at some point all of those guys play, meaning the first-rounder guys. But ideally, it would be nice if probably Minnesota and Jacksonville just led them into their game plan eventually. I just think that Cleveland at some point they're just gonna do it anyway. And I think that at this point, in this stage, Brian Hoyer is probably the best option.
Yeah, easily. Here on the Bottom Line Sports Show, Reeta Hubbard, Gerald Brown. I totally agree with you. I think Teddy Bridgewater, and he actually said he didn't want to go to Cleveland. And I think clearly when you go to a situation where, you can be able to learn, you're perhaps maybe set up for a long-term success.
I agree.
Rita, if you look at it, and obviously it's such a hard task to even say that who the winner and losers, because, again, we're just going off of names. If you look at it right now, who would be your winners of this draft thus far?
I love the Rams draft. I thought that their draft was great. I love Aaron Donald. I love the picks that they had. Picking up, they picked up someone else that I really liked, and I can't remember off the top of my head, but they had a really good draft. I think it was solid, and obviously we want to talk about Michael Sam. Michael Sam, if he makes the team, would be a really good situational player on that team. But ultimately, they filled some holes and they solidified themselves possibly as one of the most underrated defenses that we'll see in the NFL because now you have Donald alongside Long and Quinn, and that's going to be a nasty line. So I really like what they did in the draft. Atlanta had a pretty solid draft as well. I think that they filled some holes. That getting the offensive line obviously is key. Matt Ryan got hit a lot last year, and they needed to solidify their offensive line, and I think that they did that. I like that, and I really liked Sammy Watkins going to Buffalo. I did. EJ Manuel could use him, and I like I think Robert Woods, is that his name? The wide receiver that they have. Yeah. I like him. I like what he can do. So I really think that Buffalo, I think the AFC East is watered down. Tampa had a good draft.
Oh yeah, thank you. Give a round.
They wanted Mike Evans, they got him. And so now all your wide receivers are like Amazons.
But you know what? I want to go back to St. Louis. Yes, it was very nice to upgrade that defense because you play in a offensive-minded. I wouldn't even say that. Really, a defensive-heavy division.
Yes.
Outside of Arizona, I think Arizona perhaps has the ton of offensive weaponry. If Carson Palmer can stay healthy, you look at Seattle. We know how dominant their defense, along with San Francisco. So now you can throw St. Louis into the equation. But the key question will be, how healthy can a guy like Sam Bradford stay? And then what are they going to get out of their wide receivers as well as their running backs? I think the young man Tavon Austin really didn't provide a lot of support. And, again, this is perhaps, I think, the last year for a guy like Sam Bradford in terms of being able to play for a contract. So
I agree.
If those are the winners, who are your losers?
I don't like Cleveland's draft for the most. I mean, I think that they had some good picks in the later rounds, but I don't like the Manziel pick in an AFC North that loves to play defense. People like to compare him to Ben Roethlisberger, and I just don't. He's not Ben Roethlisberger. He's half the size of Ben Roethlisberger, and he doesn't see down the field as well as Ben Roethlisberger. So I don't like that comparison at all. I just don't understand what they were doing with the Sammy Watkins, pick, and they went with the safety instead. I just don't know. I think that as the draft went on, they did get better, but those two picks I just always find to be questionable. I think that I'm still not a fan of Blake Bortles. Jacksonville had a good draft ultimately, I think, but I just don't think that Blake Bortles is the guy that's going to run that team. So, those two stood out to me more than anybody else because there's quarterbacks involved, obviously, and these are the guys that are going to be their future. I just don't, I don't really understand why Jacksonville, I feel, is making the same mistake all over again. They fell in love with a guy with similar abilities a couple years ago, and then they traded him for some Skittles and a blow pop to San Francisco. So
I agree with you in terms of Cleveland, but let's be honest, that's more marketing. And
absolutely.
That's more marketing. And I think he can be successful, and I think that he is a dynamic football player, and I think he's going to surprise a lot of people. But last week we had on the show, great friend to the show, Will Allen, and Will Allen was saying, you know what, that Pittsburgh Steelers defense, he said, I can't wait to get a chance to hit him.
I said the same thing on draft day. I was like, I can't wait for my team, obviously the Ravens, to crack at them. And then you have the Bengals, who's a top 5 defense. So, he's not going to get rest. He's not going to get a lot of rest. It's not that I don't think that he could play well. My problem is can he stay healthy? And that's going to be the setback. That's where I think it's going to be an issue. I mean, we know what he can do. We've seen what he's able to do in college. But then I also have some other issues with his game from college as well. Again, his vision down the field isn't that great. You can't just throw up plays like that in the NFL. I mean, they can happen once in a blue moon, but that can't be your game in the NFL. You have to have some type of strategy.
But see, here's the thing, Rita, and this is one of the things I dispute a lot of the times. I think that, in some regard, this was sort of the curse, if it was, with the whole gift of having the draft move back, because I think we got to a point that we just started over-evaluating things.
Yes,
let's be honest. We know that the SEC is the closest thing to the NFL in college. We're told that the Alabamas, all the other teams in there, that's where you find your elite talent. And this is a guy, hands down, not once, but twice, shredded that Alabama defense. Okay? He shredded, and for all of his faults and the things that, he's not a finished product, but what he has, those other intangibles, those are things that you can't teach, and he is very, very special. The only problem that we've seen, just like with any player, when you have a special player, you got to have him in the right situation. Because if they don't have talent around him, and specifically playing that quarterback position, he's going to need an offensive line to protect him. When he does get his opportunity, he's going to need Ben Tate to run the ball effectively. But more importantly, he's going to have wide receivers. He's got to have wide receivers. And that's the same thing for Brian Hoyer as well. They got to have wide receivers that defensive coordinators and DBs will respect. And if that's not there, you're not going to have a situation where whoever is the quarterback for the Cleveland Browns be able to be successful. But at this early stage, that was all about selling jerseys, putting the Cleveland Browns back into the limelight. And think about it this way. He is doing for the Browns what LeBron James did for the Cleveland Cavaliers.
Absolutely. I agree.
That's all. He's selling tickets. And that's the thing. And then in regards to Blake Bortles, well, that's another situation. He's from Central Florida. He's right there in Orlando. You want to get a homebody there, sell some tickets. They missed out on an opportunity with Tim Tebow. Now they have an opportunity to possibly sell some tickets. And I do like the move of bringing in some wide receivers. You don't know what Justin Blackmon's going to give you moving forward. I think
that they're done with him. I think he's done. They gave his blocker to some undrafted free agent. He's done in Jacksonville. So we have to assume that they're going to move on. And I think that they did a good job at the time of the draft of replenishing that.
Yeah, and then it's also, I think another loser would be Houston. I just don't know in which direction.
Oh, yeah, big time.
It's just a question of what are you going to get from the quarterback position. If they are going to be able to get Ryan Mallett, it doesn't help. And, I mean, this is something outside of the draft. I mean, it doesn't help when you have a guy like Andre Johnson, arguably your face of your franchise, that has been your face of your franchise since 2003, talking about that he doesn't know if he wants to be back. Arian Foster is coming off of injuries last year. So there's a lot of questions. And I don't think the defense was ever an issue. It's offensively. No. That team won 2 games last year, and a lot of that was predicated on the offense inability to be effective on the offensive side of the ball. So really is something interesting, and it remains to be seen, and obviously we'll have more to talk about. But, Rita, let everybody know before we let you get on out of here where they can check out everything that you have going on, and how do you keep your hair so fly and fresh and everything.
So, of course, you can check me on Twitter at the NFL Chick, and then the NFLChick.com or gridirongals.com. And, I keep my beauty regimens to myself. I can't keep everybody. I can't get everybody everything.
Yeah. Well, hopefully next time you come up to New York, you remember the small people like Gerald Brown and the little guys and stuff. You get a chance to hang out. And I hope you had a great Mother's Day. And
thank you.
Definitely, hopefully next time you come up here, you can hang out with the little guys and stuff. Reeta Hubbard. It's been a great show. So got some great insight. And, look, I love the NFL draft. I think a lot of the teams, it's always a situation where you have those teams that you sit back and you question some of the moves that they make. And, that's the beauty of it all. That's the beauty of it all, is the fact is you just don't know. You just don't know. So it looks like, again, the NBA playoffs get going tomorrow. Once again, pivotal game 6 in LA. The Clippers are taking on the Oklahoma City Thunder. They have an opportunity to close it out. The Indiana Pacers, and Lord knows whatever they're going to do, they have an opportunity to close the series out in Washington. I think that might be a good situation. Of the road teams tomorrow, I'm giving the nod to the Indiana Pacers simply because I think that they're pretty much in a better situation when they're away from, Conseco Fieldhouse or whatever it's called now. But when you're on the road, you have an opportunity to maybe focus a little bit more, as opposed to when you're at home. I don't know what the distractions, the mindset, the psyche, and all that stuff. And it's one of those things where you just got to take last game and throw it out the window and say, hey, you know what, forget about it, because clearly Marcin Gortat really went bananas. You had a lot of situations where you had a guy like Roy Hibbert, at least 12, 13 feet away from the basket, shooting long jump shots. That's not his game. I've always said, and I'm going to keep saying it, in the playoffs, when you have situations where you struggle to get into your offensive sets, that's also predicated on the fact is the lack of having a point guard to stabilize your offense, to get guys where they need to be, and get guys in the positions to make sure that you get quality possessions on the offensive side of the ball. So it was a clunker. They rebounded. They rebounded very well after Game 1 debacle. Win Game 2, go into to Washington and take 2 games. So now they're playing with house money. And I had said this last week on the show that if they didn't close them out, would they be in danger? I don't think that this is a team that wants to go to a 7th game. They have to close this series out tomorrow. So there's going to be some pressure on the Indiana Pacers to get this done. And really, more than ever, take some time away. Because you know what? If they get past the Washington Wizards, this is what you asked for. This is what you asked for. Everything you wanted. It's right here. It's on a silver platter. It's just saying here you go. You wanted the Miami Heat, you got them. But if they take care of their business against Washington, they got Miami. And it's going to be a question of what are you going to do? You can't afford to come out slow because this is not the Atlanta Hawks. This is not the Washington Wizards. These are the 2-time defending champs, and you're going to have their attention. This is what you all asked for. Forget about the regular season, and it remains to be seen. How effective will the Indiana Pacers be if they get past them? So they got to win this game tomorrow night. So I'm picking them to win. And the series with the Oklahoma City Thunder, I think that it comes down to, like I said before, from start to finish. They got to have another score. And it seems like that way for both teams. Jamal Crawford struggled late, hit some big shots down the stretch, but really his shooting percentage was atrocious, didn't shoot the ball very well. J.J. Redick hasn't been effective. You got that point production. You got a good, solid performance out of guys like Matt Barnes, but you're going to have to make sure you get that third scorer because you know what you're going to get from a guy like Chris Paul, who's going to be on a mission to rectify what happened in Game 5, as well as you know what you're going to get from Blake Griffin. DeAndre Jordan has to stay on that basketball court. He must stay out of foul trouble, him and Blake Griffin. They get in foul trouble, this could end tomorrow night. But I see this series going 7 games, and they dancing Sunday night for a right to go on to the Western Conference Finals. In regards to the Portland Trailblazers and the San Antonio Spurs, early still in all, I don't think that it's a situation right now. It's 30-24, San Antonio. This is a learning process. This is a learning process for the Trailblazers. They need to continue to learn. I don't expect them to win this series, let alone if they steal a game down there, I'd be very, very surprised to see this series go at least 6 games. And as the guy says in the Mio commercial, it changes everything. So I don't see that happening. Steve Kerr is the newest head coach for the Golden State Warriors. I can't wait to see how Knicks fans will feel with a guy like Bill Cartwright being your coach. I'm sorry, and no disrespect to Bill, but it's going to be really interesting to see what Plan B is for Phil Jackson. Be very interesting. Is it a guy like Jim Clemens? Who is going to be that next guy? Be very, very interesting to see. And if Bill Cartwright gets that job, that is a mockery to a guy like Patrick Ewing. I mean, clearly, this guy's paying his dues there in Charlotte. He would definitely be a guy. So it'd be very interesting now that Steve Kerr has spurned the New York Knicks. And then in his situation, as the old model says, You know, the grass isn't always greener on the other side. So be really interested to see how things go. They're going to have to win 51 games. It's been put out there. Going to have to grade that roster. So be really interested to see how well Steve Kerr does in Golden State. Don't forget, we're back Saturday, Sunday, 10 a.m. on SiriusXM NBA Radio. We're back here next Wednesday. Like to thank Ricky Keeler. Like to thank Reeta Hubbard. More importantly, we'd like to thank you. This is Gerald Brown. All I needed was one mic and you. I'm on Sports Shows out. LL Cool J style. Peace.